Hey, Jack Fleming here. This little S10 right here is one of the cleanest little trucks that's come into my shop, and the customer gave those magic words of do what you think would look best on it. And I did, and I want to show you guys this. I did a lot of things on this that I don't often do, so you'll see some blends, you'll see some fades, you'll see some drop shadows, kind of all in a little bit of a 90s, early 2000s flair. Hope you guys enjoy. Stick around and watch. There's a lot of tips in this video that I don't normally share in some of the other videos because this was the opportunity to do it. Alright, so this S10, I believe it was an '02, actually has pretty good mileage on it, but it was really well taken care of. It does have a bunch of rock chips and stuff on the hood and some teeny tiny little dents and not very many of them, and that was it. Like everything else on it was clean. The interior looked perfect. The top that was on was a really nice top. I was really impressed with what kind of shape it was in. I'm kind of an S10 fan, usually first gen, but I really like this one. So I kind of wanted to give it a little extra, and he allowed me to do so. Go ahead and walk you through what's going on here. I'm putting guide tape down first. I knew that I wanted to do a graphic all the way down the side, and I measured one side after doing it, come over to the other side and make sure it's at the same height. And this first piece of tape here is really, it's actually where paint's going to be. Trying to get it all straight, lined up where I want it. After I get that, then I come back and I put tape on the top and the bottom of this, and I'm going to put another piece with it to make it wider. But use that to kind of mask off since we're doing a wider graphic here that's going to have a fade in it. Alright, the tape that I'm using on this is the green 3M tape. Probably could have used more inexpensive tape, but it is the tape that I had on hand. Starting off with 1/4" tape here. I'm actually putting two together and figuring out that width that I want, but I want it to be skinnier at the front and get wider as it goes to the back. So that's why I'm using two pieces of tape instead of one wider tape here. You can see I played around with some different ideas on how the front part of that was going to look. This is another tape. I just forgot the name of the brand of tape that it is. But it's like a fine line tape, and it's a vinyl tape. This is actually a very flexible one. Didn't know if I wanted to do any really tight curves or anything, but also working with what tape I had on hand. Going through, and I'm actually making that tape almost touch the green tape on the bottom going all the way down, because I used that green tape to figure out what I wanted. After I've got the top and the bottom, peel the center section out, and that's where I'm going to paint. So here's a good little trick that I like to use. I know other people have other tricks, but it's the Scotch tape trick. I know that I want a really clean end on this, and I want it to be about 1/4 inch wide or so before it gets to the end of the body panel there where it touches the light. So I put Scotch tape down. Doing the same at the back of the cab and the front of the bed. I'm going behind the tape that I have there that was for the top and the bottom. Slide that all the way up until it touches the other tape, or to where I want the end of that line to be. That way when I'm painting, I don't have to do anything extra to get a really good crisp end to that. I'm going to be fading and all, so it's really hard to come in and touch stuff up. Let's do the same thing to the cab as we did to the back. And if you do this, you want to make sure that that edge where the paint's going to touch, that you really smooth it out really well with your fingers so that paint doesn't bleed up underneath it. After we've done that, I cut the other two tapes, and then I roll those over the top of that. And I like to take my fingernail and go inside the seam where the two tapes touch. I don't know if you see me do that here. I didn't. I went back and did it though. But I used my fingernail to make sure that there's not going to be any bleed through underneath that. So here I know that I want to break in that line, and I'm trying to figure out the width of it, the angle of it, the distance. But I want to keep that angle consistent. Kind of like breaking that line up and letting the body color show through some for this graphic. I think it looks really nice. Measure that distance, make them the same. That way it's easy to duplicate on the other side. And you probably saw me using my fingernail there again to kind of go in and make sure there's not going to be any bleed through. Here's the colors that I picked out that I thought I would want to use. Didn't really have a clear idea ahead of time. I figure a lot of stuff out as I go. So here's a couple of brush tips. If you've watched my videos before, you've probably seen this. I store my brushes with oil in the hairs so that any paint that's in there doesn't dry out, and the brush hairs themselves don't dry out. They stay conditioned. Before I paint, I clean that out. I have 2 jars down inside of my bucket here. One's the first one I clean stuff out in. I clean my paint out in it first. I clean the oil out from the brushes like I'm doing here first. After that, I clean out in the second jar. That's where I was right there. It's a cleaner jar. After each clean, you'll see me roll the brush between my hands. That opens those hairs up, knocks a bunch of that thinner out, and allows it to dry from the hairs before I get ready to start painting. I wish I could have taken better footage for you guys of this right here, but I started with white in the front, and I'm slowly adding teal to my paint as I go to the back and brushing it in. It's kind of hard for me to film that with just one person and one camera, so I ended up doing it with a time lapse. But you have to work really fast with the enamels when you do this. I really couldn't come up with another way to do it. Again, started with one color, brush that on, add a little bit of the second color to it, and then come back and brush into it and work that and get a nice fade on it, and then add more color and keep doing that as I work my way all the way down the truck. Something I didn't show in the video here is I actually masked off the top and bottom afterwards and came back with a toothbrush and made some splatters over the top of that too. Kind of break it up. It also sort of hides your fade a little bit if there's any inconsistencies in it. Little tip there. I know I'm running really fast through a lot of tips and stuff here, but I got a lot of good footage of a lot of different things here in this video. There's me putting powder on my fingers, another good tip. I do that so my fingers don't chatter whenever I'm dragging a line down the car. I'm going to be outlining the broad line that I did before with the fade in it. That line actually went to teal as it went down the sides, and it goes to the center of the tailgate. It almost becomes purple. So in the back here when I'm outlining it with Kansas City teal. And it's hard to see in the picture here, but it actually ends up showing up really good against that color, and as it gets to that purple part, it shows up really, really well. You'll see later on in other parts of the footage. If you pay attention to my fingers here, this is something that I've only figured out in the past few years that really helped me with my long line work. I'm dragging my fingers on the bottom part of that tape and feeling that line, but at the same time, I'm watching the gap between my brush and the top part of that paint. I kind of knew these two things and used them before in the past, but never put them together of putting my line above the tape and my hand below the tape. Once I figured that out, and it was a tip from somebody else, it really helped me a lot. It helped me to have a way more consistent line. Kind of my number one thing that I like to teach people if I'm showing them anything with long lines. I am not perfect at long lines, but I've gotten a lot more confidence since I started doing that. Something you'll notice here, if you look at my paint, you can see a couple of different colors going on there, and I just added another color to it. I'm actually taking that outline, and just like that main fat line was going around the truck faded, I'm actually blending my outline and fading it from color to color as it goes back towards the front. So where the broad line in the very back is purple and goes to teal and goes to white, I started with teal in the back with this one, and I'm actually moving it into magenta, and then from magenta into orange as I go to the front of the truck. So here I've already started adding in just a little bit of that magenta, so it starts making it a little bit more purple, so it shows contrast between it and the teal that's on the side of the truck there. And then as it goes down, it's going to keep changing colors and always have contrast. It's off camera, but I keep paleting my brush and mixing the new color in every time, and then dipping the tip of it in the previous color just a little bit so I can pull that fade. Try to get a little closer here so you can see. I really try to take a lot of time with the ends of these to make sure that the tips of that shape where that break is are really crisp. I think it really shows a lot of good craftsmanship if you spend the extra time to make sure you have good crisp corners. Yeah, crisp corners. Tripping over my tongue. You can kind of catch too whenever you see the brush here that we've now moved this color almost into a purple by adding magenta, or I think it's dark magenta, into that teal. And I'll actually clean my brush out some as I'm going and then mix more color. Here you can see where I'm adding more magenta into what's already on the brush. A little loose hair there, just pull those out and keep working, and then I'm dipping into that previous color like I mentioned. That way when I pull the line, it pulls that previous color out of the hairs and into the new color that I've mixed into the brush. It's a little hard to see that right here, but you can see to the right how that color was purple and now it's magenta. And do the same thing for the bottom line. So I'm trying to do both the top line and the bottom line at the same time, so I'm only having to mix that color once. And you can see again how my fingers are following the bottom edge of that tape, and there's a gap between the brush and the top part of the tape. Peel that tape off there. It's just a guide. Ready to move on. Keep moving down the truck. So now I'm going to work back the opposite way with orange, and I'm going to pull, because it's going to become orange, I'm going to pull that orange out of the brush back into the magenta so that my blend is at the front part of that panel. This way I'm not mixing the orange into my brush yet. I've still got the magenta there. I'm getting it ready for the next color. And I always have trouble underneath these mirrors and stuff, so I'll come back and fix connections sometimes because I have a really hard time just maneuvering around those things and getting a really good connection. Now there's people out there that could probably pull it all in one pull, but I guess we all have room to improve. Always keep improving. You can see how the big fat line on this is more teal to the right and getting lighter as it comes forward. I tried to kind of keep those colors where they work really good with those. That orange looks good on the white in the front, and to me, kind of works with like speed, right? So like if something's maybe hot because of speed, I think of a space shuttle or something, it's going to be glowing towards the front. So we're letting that be up front with that orange and that white. And as it goes back, getting cooler. And here's where that Scotch tape trick came in. Nice clean edges there. Similar fade here as we did on the sides. You can see more of the blending process, and I've masked everything off because I know I'm going to use that toothbrush trick with splattering a little bit here. And I don't want to get that all over the truck. You can see really quick right there. If you've got gloves, it would be best to wear gloves during that. Try not to get the paint on your hands. I didn't have any. I apologize. All right, outlining that with my magenta. Now, as I'm going through and doing these here, I did draw out with a Stabilo pencil, or actually it's an Omnichrome, what my design was going to be. And I'm going through first with my magenta, but I'm going to come back over the top of that magenta and start doctoring it up to make shadows, to make highlights. You'll see, we'll get the design done first. And then I'll come back. I don't like leaving loose ends on designs, but I do like leaving fat ends sometimes. And with these fat ends here, I blended them from orange using the same technique we did on the sides, right? Dipping the color tip into the orange and then dragging it back. Here I actually made a darker color for the parts where I know one line's going to be over another one. Kind of like they're in the back, kind of like a ribbon that's wrapping over itself. Adding more teal into that magenta to make it look cooler as it recedes so that the warmer colors will pull forward. And I'll come back in the end after I get these parts with just magenta. Well, before that I'm using white dipped on it and making some highlights up there. They don't show up real well in the video there. You'll be able to see them later in some other parts. Same techniques here, going down the sides, trying to make that line look like it's wrapping in front and behind the big broad line. So I got some cooler colors helping it recede back behind it, and then as it comes up over the top, letting it get a little bit lighter, a little bit warmer. Right here it's hard to tell, but I took clear and add a little bit of black to it so it's transparent, and then I can go over the line where there'd be a drop shadow and create some drop shadows. I think I got some better footage of doing some of those later on, but maybe not. If you look real close, you can see some of those drop shadows on here, but I got highlights at the top. We're blending into the orange as we go around, trying to make it look like it's in space, wrapping around that. Really had a good time with this truck. You can see the speckles in there. I think it's a neat design. Kind of figured out this sort of design on a skateboard earlier this year. Loved the fact that I had an opportunity to do this kind of work on a little S10, one of my favorite vehicles. So you can see how those lines look like they're weaving through each other and over and under each other. A lot of fun. If you look here, the line that goes right there, it starts with orange, follows underneath it, parallel to that, and then becomes the line that wraps around. And the very end of it, I've also got it wrapping behind and then back in front and fading back up to orange. And what's done on one side is done on the other side of the truck. Yeah, you can see how it goes behind and comes back in the front. So this is the other side of the truck. Everything's facing the opposite way. You can see those brakes and the design going down the side, I think also adds to it. When the customer brought this truck in, he said he wanted hot rod stripes in the front and the back. And to me, it's just not the right time period vehicle for that. I talked him into doing something that matched more of the time period for the vehicle. And he absolutely loved it. His wife absolutely loved it. I'm sure people who see it at shows will love it. Thank y'all for watching this video. I don't really have the best lighting now that I'm filming as I did whenever I started. The sun's setting here. If y'all like this video, please hit like, subscribe, all that stuff. Feel like I kind of ran through stuff really fast. I would have loved to have slowed down and really showed you guys a little bit more of what's going on. But I could only do so much filming footage by myself on this. If there's things you guys would like to see, let me know in the comments. Other kinds of videos that you'd like me to make. If you enjoy the dog barking in the background out here, let me know. Till then, see you guys. Check out one of the other videos that pops up, and have a good day.